Alright guys, if you're hearing this, you've stuck around for part 2. The first one we did 2 movies. We did Waking Life and Enemy, and now we're going to be diving into the big fish. We're hitting it hard. This is going to be our analyzed review of Holy Motors. What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning back into the second part of our Analyze series here. Again, I'm your host, Luke Larson, and you are my loyal listeners. And joining me today, as per the usual, is my lovely and loquacious special analyst.
How are we doing?
Old Legs.
What's up?
So, we both done quite a bit of homework. Like we mentioned in the last one, these are types of movies that you have to do a lot of homework. We both have quite a substantial amount of notes here.
I'm ready to give my Holy Motors thesis.
Okay, well,
so
to dive in, the plot, there isn't a plot. That's the number one rule with this movie. There kind of is, but there's a lot of themes. I basically just transcribed what happened scene to scene, and just took things that stood out to me. And I think if we just run through it, I think we'll pick up on stuff. I don't know how else we would do it.
I guess we can give
Unless
a basic.
You do it. I think you have a good. You'd be able to give a better all around.
Okay.
Without just droning in like I would do. I would go for the length of the movie talking about that.
So the basic I shouldn't say synopsis, but the idea of the movie is you follow a man who is riding in a limo, and he has these different appointments, is what they're called. And at these appointments, he has basically at the disposal, an entire makeup and wardrobe in the back of his limo.
Mm-hmm.
He assumes a different personality, a different person basically every time he leaves the limo, and that's about what the whole movie is.
Hijinks ensue. I forgot that part.
So we start with this movie. We start the movie with
a very interesting scene that has nothing to do with the rest of them, which is similar to the ending as well, sort of. The ending has more to do with them, but this opening, I always forget that this is the opening every time I watch it. I'm glad I wrote it down this time, because the opening is just what are we in for here? And I always forget that that's the opening because it is kind of on its own island. So, basically, it opens up. There's you're in a theater, and you're looking out at the audience.
First,
And you see just silhouettes of heads, and it's an eerie shot. It's whoa, and it lingers. And then there's an old dude in a bed.
Who is actually, by the way, the director.
Ah.
So we started off with Waking Life. Richard Linklater makes his cameo at the end. Leos Carax makes his cameo at the beginning as the key man.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Right.
So he unlocks the door to let us in.
Yes, and I feel like this is a very it's not really subtle at all. As far as this is basically his mind, right?
I think so.
And I thought it was so bizarre. I don't know if it's just because we watched all 3 of these movies in pretty short succession, but I saw one. I saw that in the room with him, one of the few things that he has in his room is a laptop, which he's watching a movie. And if we go back to Enemy,
Uh-huh.
what did Jake Gyllenhaal's subconscious have?
A laptop
which he watched
watching
a
a
movie. Which the only thing I didn't get about Enemy besides the spiders was the fact that he went to a video store to rent a movie when he had a laptop and he could have just pirated the movie. I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah, but some of us don't like to break the law around here.
But I thought I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. These are two completely different things.
And we got to figure out how to bring it back to Halloween Town 2. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Halloween Town 2 is coming. It's the key to everything.
Yeah, that is.
It's the key to everything.
The next Analyze review, we'll dive into that one.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can.
So, yeah, the movie opens up. The guy wakes up. The director of the movie, he's
got a dog.
Key. He has a dog. He has a key for a finger. He opens up a little thing, a little notch in the door, and he enters the movie theater. And for me, this is just his mind and everyone in the seats. Those are all like voices, in his head, his subconscious, and he's looking out into his life, which is, what he sees through his eyes, which is the movie, which is kind of in my opinion, a kind of beautiful way to look at life. It's all just a movie.
It's just a movie, man.
Yeah. So
I feel like,
and that brings us to our main character.
Not quite. There's another symbolic scene that you're leaving out here that's odd. Is when he's looking out over the audience, he sees a baby walking down the aisle of the movie theater, and then there's this huge dog right behind it, and it's growling and in a predatory stance, like it's going to eat the baby. Now, is that just something he thinks about on a daily basis? I mean, it could be.
I guess I don't even remember the baby.
Yep.
I remember the dog.
Yep, because the baby walks...
I think I got distracted because it's a different dog that's
right.
in the room.
It's a big, scary dog.
Big dog.
And
so
the baby walks by, and this dog's like right behind him, and you're like, is this dog gonna eat the baby? And then, main character.
Who is our man in the limo.
Yep. So he basically comes out of this big white house. He is kind of limping a little bit. It looks like he has a lot of money. He's got a lot of bodyguards, a lot of cars. Gets into the limo. And there's some exposition here. That's what I found these limo rides is mainly exposition, which is the little we get, is basically, that's what it is. So that's where you find the meaning and what the director tells you to give you clues.
Right. And I would say there's basically three pivotal characters in this movie. You have Oscar, who is our main character. You have Celine, who is the limo driver.
Yep.
And you have the limo itself, which I would consider as a character.
Yep.
Okay.
As far as real, what we assume are real characters.
Right. So our first stop was the elderly woman. What did you think about that?
Yeah, so if I could just quickly, I just wanted to say one thing about the first limo ride. Is just he's on the phone with somebody, and it's just exposition, like we said, but he just says the bodyguards aren't enough. We need guns now. So you get kind of a sense of that things aren't going great,
right,
that he's in danger.
And already, we'll get to this idea of continuing after the day is done, after he's fulfilled all his appointments.
Yeah.
But this is actually the first character that he is playing
exactly.
before he gets into the car and figures out like what his first appointment is, because this is a separate character, okay, and it's reoccurring in the film later. But we see that this is all they're all they're separate entities.
And he talks to Sergey, who eventually meets up with him later in the car about it. And so so the old woman, right, the old beggar is the first appointment. And the bodyguards are with her right away, and then they fall off, and you don't see him. She's just a beggar. I don't think there's a lot in this scene necessarily. She has a line of like, for years all she's seen is like stone and feet, and she's afraid she's never gonna die. And those were things that stuck out to me.
Yeah. I think a key to this movie is kind of understanding like the chronological order of it, and how for me it kind of flips like life upside down. So I think like a really interesting idea that kind of struck me and kind of helped me understand this movie for myself. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but the idea that the elderly we all get, most of us get pretty sick, when we get old and we die, and we require an immense amount of care, and we're dependent on people just as we were when we were infants, when we were babies.
Right.
We're completely dependent on other people. And I think that's kind of how this starts, is like the elderly woman he's portraying is dependent on other people. She's begging for money. She's, at the end of her life, and it kind of goes from there. So it's kind of like drawing the parallel between like the start of life and the beginning of life, and they're about the same thing. And then it kind of goes from there. But
yeah, and I remember that from your review. If I were to make a joke here, it'd be referring to Benjamin Button. That'd be my go-to.
Benjamin Button really helped me with this movie, because I think that's how it kind of goes. Yeah.
Okay, so then we have the second limo ride. Nothing really happens. Celine looks a little bit worried. That's about it.
Right.
Like I said, I just wrote down the things that popped out to me. So, okay, so then we have the second appointment, which I called mocap.
I called Madden Guy.
You son.
I called Madden.
And this one, like I don't know if
Street Fighter.
You and I used to run a website together called World 89, and one of the first posts you did was a really long review of this movie where you kind of dove in deep. And I remember reading some of this stuff and thinking, wow, I think you hit a lot of the good stuff. And I think this one is the one that really like screams, you're right to this point.
I don't really remember what I wrote, so
okay.
I remember what I'm thinking right now, but...
Right, and it's similar. I don't remember exactly either, but I remember it was basically about life, and like different stages of life, and how each appointment is kind of a progression through your life. So like, that was the main idea of it anyway. And so this one I think really screams out to me. So, basically, it's our main character. He goes to their house. He's in his black suit with white dots on it, motion capture. Goes into a room. He starts doing all these flips. He's got a staff. And there's just like this, what's it called?
He basically looks like Ken from Street Fighter. He's
like and he was an old guy at the beginning, like we said, he's playing characters, and now he's doing flips and being acrobatic. And there's a disembodied voice telling him what to do. He has to run on a treadmill, and then
you want me to keep going with it? Yeah. Then the woman comes
in red. She's wearing a red suit, which is the color for lust, obviously. That was like easy.
So a woman appears, and if you're following like the the idea of like life, you can take this as adolescence and the idea of sexuality, and sexuality being of interest now to someone, and it's very provocative
and odd,
very much odd, but you can see that the idea is pretty straightforward, that you're getting a sense that this person is understanding their sexuality, and their sexual
they're
experimenting.
Right.
Everyone does.
And I'm looking at I kind of wrote stuff down. A couple of things I wrote here. Adolescent expectations for sex, ? So like we said,
there's
experimenting.
Not actually sex.
They're
so
just
it's
they're kind of like what they think would be.
Right.
And then the other thing I wrote was porn plus video games equals 12-year-old.
Yeah, it kind of leaves you with like deep weird internet.
So
porn.
So that's what I think is like. I mean that's where it screams out to me, is like a 12-year-old. It's just jerking off all the time.
Yeah.
This weird sex, and it's experimenting with his sexuality. And also there's video games in there,
Right.
and it's like that screams to me 12-year-old, you know.
Yep.
So I mean, I think you're spot on there. I don't know what else. So, so then third limo ride. Great scene when he opens the file for his next appointment. He's like, shit. And
Does he actually do that?
he does. He's like, shit. And we know why. 'Cause we know what's coming. He has sushi for lunch. She says they're a little late. He asks about Forrest. He says he misses Forrest. He wants to do an appointment in the forest. He misses that. Then we get into the leprechaun, the highlight of this film.
If you take, I could see people, you know, very much not liking this movie, beginning to end. But
and really, at this point,
at the very least,
Yeah, sorry, I'll let you finish.
I think the leprechaun is worth the price of admission.
Oh yeah, this is good. I definitely 100% agree with you, and I think, you know, the movie hasn't asked a lot of you yet. I mean, the weird sex is weird, but it's not like that crazy. This leprechaun one, it asks a little bit of you as an audience, so I think this is really where they start throwing gas on the fire. So if you're, I think this is probably where people get divided. Either they're in 100% or they're out the door.
You're now being asked to take a leap of faith.
Yes, exactly. This is so. And one thing after rewatching it this time, is, I think I said it to you too, is just the music in this scene is incredible. Because before it was like fine, you know, it was kind of like normal hidden kind of music. This one is like the opening, just showy, big. It's like old school Hollywood.
It's kind of like
horror
that chambery,
music.
yeah.
You know, like. Ba, 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 ba.
It's almost like a little, the bum bum bum.
Oh, So
and I took a little. I wrote something down too with that it's, and this kind of progress. If you like following us, we were at infancy to adolescence to now what I can only think of as being college.
Right, could be.
College and and just almost the cliche nature of it, with the leprechaun. So you wanna keep going with that? What happens with our little leprechaun?
Well, he goes into a sewer, and then he comes up into a graveyard. I'm just telling you guys, the music in this scene is just so good. Like, it's just so good. Just the ba ba ba, like you said, and then when he comes and there's just like that weird old school like zoom in Hollywood black spotlight onto him that they don't use anymore. Well, then he comes up into a graveyard, and he's walking through these graves, and he's just taking flowers and eating them off of the graves. And one thing I noticed watching this time, all the grave sites have a website on them. Every single one.
A website?
Yeah, I know, because I never noticed that before.
Did you visit any of these websites?
I went and then above it was like www. whatever, every single one, and then above it on every single one.
I had no idea.
I know, because you're so focused on the leprechaun. Every single one said above it in text, "Visit my site," and it was the website. It's like a grave site, website. What does that mean? I don't know. And like
that's
completely
lost to me.
I've
seen this movie like
I know. I only realized it this time, but he's walked around and I just saw one. I was like, wait, what? Looked, every single one was like www.whatever.org, and then it said visit my site, all in different languages. And I was like, what the hell? Just said it on every single tombstone. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, he was just eating flowers off of them, picking up flowers, taking a bite, throwing them. Then, you know, he comes into a crowd of people. They're afraid of him. Just kicks a blind man, throws him to the ground, bites him. Normal.
Yeah. And then we get one of one of the great cameos in cameo history, I feel like.
Yeah.
Right
next to Will Ferrell in Wedding Crashers is Eva Mendes.
Eva Mendes, our star mother,
and
she can do no wrong.
She did well.
So Eva Mendes, she shows up in this. She shows up in this movie as a model. She's being photoed.
Mm-hmm.
Our main character Oscar, playing as a leprechaun, sees her, and this is after he's defiled graves and assaulted a person. Comes up and he interrupts the photo shoot. The photographer tries to photo him. He is not interested.
You could say that.
What he is interested in is Eva Mendes,
right?
Who he steals away from the photo shoot.
Because the photographer's assistant, the photographer makes his assistant ask the leprechaun. The leprechaun just bites her fingers off.
Right.
Then licks Eva Mendes' armpit.
Yes.
And then steals her.
Yes.
And one other thing that stood out to me, I don't know if it really matters all that much, but when the photographer is taking pictures of Eva Mendes, he just keeps saying, beauty, 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 over and over and over and over again.
Weird.
And then, when the leprechaun comes up, he's just like, oh, weird. He's so weird. 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 And I'm like, what is that? So, I don't know if it's just like, if that's how college, if it is college, they perceive the media.
For me, the leprechaun is basically, the worst version of yourself, which is, I kind of assume with most college kids, as being, getting completely blackout drunk and then thinking that Eva Mendes is, sitting across the bar making your move and,
right.
Bringing her back to the cave, which I also thought was probably very similar to a college, house, like the standard,
that's true.
College house. The cave.
Yes. And he
trying to perform sexual acts under, extreme levels of alcohol.
And he literally takes her money out and eats it, saying college kids don't have money and they waste money. They just throw it away.
I thought this was like standard, one night stand material, which, God bless the other person in these situations. Obviously, Eva Mendes, kind of along with the joke, but not nearly.
She's not really scared. That's what stood out to me the whole time. She's just like tolerating it. Yeah.
In any of these situations, there's always the much more drunk one.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of.
You seem to have some pretty intimate knowledge about this subject.
Not at all.
I've never been there before.
It's
never happened.
I've read about it
in a book once.
Yeah, I thought it was incredibly on the nose.
That's a good point.
All the way up until the him covering her whole body and face and sending her out his cave, which I also like pertain to like kind of the walk of shame in the morning, as
it could be. I took what that jumped out to me as is like you said, like it could be being blackout drunk. I took it as like trying to let someone into your life,
Sure.
And like the intimacy of what that is, and you trying to change someone to like he takes her into his life, and then he's like, okay, now that you're mine, no one else can have you. Like, I want you to be like this. You have to do this. You have to model for me. You have to look good. I don't want anyone else to see you. That's kind of what it stood out to me a little bit. It seemed a little symbolic of like, I don't know, like that was kind of his personal darkness life that he let someone else into, kind of force them into, and then she's just kind of accepting it.
Yeah. I saw the ugliness of a one-night stand, and I thought it was pretty.
Yeah.
I thought it's probably the best scene in the movie. It's really good.
For sure. That whole sequence is the moneymaker. The photographer's name is Harry T-Bone. Thought that was interesting. He does eat her hair at some point. I said that one thing I wrote on here was odd behavior and underlined it. I don't know. I thought that kind of summed it up pretty much. Okay. She does at one point give him a look and he covers her face. And that could be like whenever you're drunk, the worst thing to hear is, "Oh, you're so drunk," like you hate. So maybe she's calling him out on his shit, like you had said, in the one night stand thing. I'm just reading things that I wrote down. Nip slip. He did look at her nip for a second. Changed her dress. There's a big black square tattoo on his back. It covers basically his whole back. Don't know what that means. If it's supposed to mean anything. He talks to his boner and slaps himself. I also wrote that down.
We could name like every thing that happened.
Right, I didn't know if these meant anything.
I don't know. There's too much. We'll be here all day.
It's true.
So
okay, but
anything else from that? Or?
Well, at the end, she sings him a lullaby to get him to go to sleep.
Which, again, let's praise.
Praise
the beautiful and lovely.
Right, she's a saint. That is true. Okay, yeah. So then, fourth limo ride, nothing. And then is the part. Bad dad / I wrote party pooper on mine here. This is a very interesting scene, not as action packed or as crazy as the last one, but this one always stood out to me. Just kind of in an I don't know. It's just kind of a weird. It's a really cool. I like this scene, and it's weird, And I have an idea of what I think it might symbolize, but
What's that?
Well, okay, so basically, it's his dad. He picks up his daughter from this party. She comes out, and he's like, "Oh, did you have a good time? Did you dance with the boys?" She's like, "Yeah, I danced with this boy, this boy, this boy." He sounds so proud of her, all this other stuff. And then basically, he finds out that she lied to him, that she really hid in the bathroom the whole time. And that's why she wanted to leave early. She didn't really dance with all the boys. Her friend did.
Right.
And he was like, "Why can't you be more easygoing like your friend?" That type of thing. And it was just kind of interesting. So I thought, and he has a great ending line in this thing where he but we'll get to that. But so I think, so basically I think this symbolizes what stood out to me if we're going along with your theory, and we'll say if let's just say that if the leprechaun is college behavior, we could say this is maybe that's the beginning of college. You're trying to figure your life out, like you said, the kind of the bad parts of you when you're starting to figure your life out. I could see this as somebody projecting what they're gonna be like when they're a dad. Almost kind of what when I'm gonna be a dad, I'm gonna be way cooler. She's gonna have to be cool. I'm gonna be the cool dad.
It felt very midlife crisis-y to me. Just in the sense of I see, I'm sure we all have an example of a parent that lives very vicariously through their kid.
That's true.
Whether, sports or thinking about just about what we... Did we get it figured out?
We're trying to deal with this mic. I think it worked for a second. Try it now.
There. Check.
Hey.
It's not
going great.
Check.
All right. Parents living vicariously through their kids.
That's kind of all I took from this as far as like a scene, and I thought it kind of fits the natural progression of like how we're moving through the movie.
Yeah, and I could see that. I'm not sure because it does feel kind of midlife crisis-y, but yet at the same time, I just don't know. Like the girl, she's pretty mature for kind of the things she says. Like one thing she stood out to me was like, he was like, kind of losing my train of thought here. Oh, when he's like, if you had the opportunity, would you lie to me again? And she says yes. He said, why? She's like, because we'd both be a lot happier right now. I was like, that's a really good answer. And then he has a really good ending line because he drops her off and she's like, where are you going? He's like, I have to go for a drive. And she's like, will I be punished? And he says, oh yes, your punishment is to be you, to live with yourself. It's like, hoo-wee.
Oh no.
That was a good one.
Yeah. So the next one, accordion guy.
Yeah, I said squeeze box.
Oh yeah, a squeeze box.
It says intermission.
Yeah, not a whole lot from here. I just thought this was like kind of like an incredible like scene in a movie, just having a whole band of guys playing accordions and different instruments, running through gleefully, having a good time.
Yeah, and I remember this is one of the things I remember from your original review was you had said this one you thought is like, I think you were definitely in the college mode at that time, but you had said that you thought that maybe like the Leprechaun was like the starting out of your college years, and then this was kind of like your junior, senior year when you start to get your life coordinated and start to like party responsibly maybe and have a good time. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. It's just a great scene. Like the two that always they're the most memorable is like the Leprechaun and the accordion.
Yeah.
And he yells 312 shit. I wrote that down. 312 shit. But it's in a different language. And it's it's a really cool scene, and it says interval, like it's an intermission, basically, like an old timey thing, and then you're back in the
limo.
See, now this next scene I like a lot because it's kind of hidden. It's a little more quiet of a scene, but I think it. I don't know exactly what it means, but it's pretty interesting.
I had an idea, and this was only on my second time through, but we get to like the next character is kind of like a more grimy, like we're led to assume does maybe not so much immoral things for money, so we can assume he's some kind of criminal. He ends up killing his criminal version of himself. So at this point in the movie, if you don't know what's going on, you're completely flipped on your head because, okay, he's just like killed another version of himself, and then upon making that version of himself look like himself, he himself is killed again. Mm-hmm. So for me, just kind of like rationalizing all this and trying to understand what this means, I kind of thought of just the idea that we get to a certain point in life and we can rationalize or justify doing things that maybe are not morally sound for money or for a living. It's not all like, it's kind of the classic bad guy, but you relate to him. Maybe we don't relate to him in this sense, but I think that's kind of the idea here, that we all get to a certain point and it's like, well, I need to make money. And,
Yeah.
some of us can rationalize this stuff and some can't. And this is kind of an idea where we are, justifying some probably not good stuff.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Like I said, I'm not really, and this is the doppelganger of what I was referring to in the last episode.
Oh, yeah.
When you meet your doppelganger, it's kind of doom and gloom. But what I thought was interesting was, like, I can see what you're saying, but I just don't know. It's just kind of weird because the one guy doesn't look like him right away, and then when he kills him, he stabs him in the neck, and then shaves his head, makes the scar the same, facial hair, whatever, and then he himself gets stabbed when he's dressing the body up in the neck, and so they're both laying on the ground, writhing. One thing he says to him before he stabs him was, he's like, it was an accident, I didn't deliberately do it. And Alex was his name in this one. He said you should have deliberately not done it, or something like that. And it was like, wow. And that line came up later, which was weird. But the other thing I wrote is, well, then, like, when he's trying to get back to the limo, he's limping. He falls down. It's raining out. Celine has to help him back in the limo. The other thing I wrote on here was, we don't know which one of those two guys it was coming out of there. So we don't know if it was the guy he went in there to kill, or if it was the guy who initially got stabbed. We really don't know, because they were dressed the exact same, both covered in blood, both with the same exact wound. And so I think you're onto something there, but it was just kind of interesting because, like, we literally have no idea which one of those two got back in the limo.
Right. Yeah. And that's a really kind of, I can see where you're coming from and, like, kind of like latching on to that idea.
Right.
And I think it brings us to a point where we have to start talking about Celine, the limo, and Oscar to understand or kind of have a grasp on what the rest of the movie means, like, because the next instance is not a planned appointment. It's him seeing someone on the street, getting out and killing someone kind of out of cold blood. And this, for me, I'll see what you think here. But this kind of, like, puts it all together for me. And it makes more sense after you've seen the movie and probably watched it again. But if you think about the idea of fate and you think about the idea of morality, for me, Celine represents fate in the fact that Oscar has no control of his fate. Celine is driving. So that's his fate. The limo is basically morality. He can choose how he wants to play every situation, but it's his own morality, which we'll come back to in the end when we talk about holy motors, because in a sense, like, religion gives morality. So by him getting out of the limo without Celine's accord is basically him breaking fate. And it doesn't actually happen. It's a fantasy. And I think we've all maybe had, like, a dark fantasy, like, oh my gosh, I hate that guy, I want to kill that guy. And that's kind of what happens here. He gets out of the car, he kills somebody, Celine comes in and says, I'm sorry, this is a terrible mistake, and brings him back into the limo. What do you think? Am I onto something?
Well, no, you're not. You're an idiot. I don't really know. I mean, that's very interesting. I definitely didn't think of it like that. I wasn't sure what to think of it. But I think you could be onto something. I wasn't. That was the hardest part about this movie, was trying to figure out what the limo and what Celine represented. But you did skip over a pretty big chunk of exposition in that ride.
That I'm
going to go to, because I
think it's my favorite part.
Yeah.
too
It's
of the movie.
Yeah, it's a.
But
great
I just
one.
figured we would have we have to get to that point to
Anyway,
have
we
the
might as
conversation
well.
about it.
Right. And I don't know. I don't know what Celine represents, and I don't know what the limo represents. I have an idea, and I think you're close to what I was thinking in a way. But I mean, it's hard. Another thing is, well, we can kind of talk. I'll save that for the end. But we'll touch more on that towards the end because I don't know what to think about that. But the expositional scene was when Sergei's in the car, and he says, and he's got this really bad face scar / birthmark thing. And he says, do you still enjoy your work? Some of us think you've been getting tired. We've been watching.
What makes you go on?
Yeah, what makes you go on? Mr. Oscar misses the cameras, he says. He said they used to be bigger than your head. Now you can't see them at all. He finds it hard to believe in it all. And then Sergei says thugs don't need to see security cameras to believe in them, to believe that they're there. And then he asks him what makes him go on. Mr. Oscar says the beauty of the act. And then Sergei says something like, well, they say beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And Mr. Oscar says, what happens if there's no more? If there's no beholder?
Yeah.
And
I think that's one of the best lines in the movie. The idea of just like the beauty in the act, because this is a movie essentially about nothing. Mm-hmm. But you can almost the idea of giving like life in general, just like a point, like this is the point of the movie, like, well, you can't say this is the point of life, and that's kind of what this is saying. And if you're not enjoying, the act, the beauty in life, then, what are you doing here? And it's kind of this is where I think Oscar starts to really get challenged, because he's gone through life and he's going to start to waver a little bit because he's getting tired. He's had a long day. Yeah. And can he still, find that beauty in the act, which is really where I think this movie kind of takes off. So we get next.
Yeah, I called it. One other thing, when he kills the banker, when he just randomly jumps out of the limo to shoot that guy, when the security guards are shooting him, he yells, "Aim for the crotch." I thought that was interesting. Don't know what it means, but aim for the crotch. In French. Next one I called, you can't go to bed dead. The dying man. So his name's Mr. Vogan. He's this old dude, basically on his deathbed. And I mean, this one, the conversation, he there's this young woman there, I think it's his niece. She's like 20-something. And they basically just have this really beautiful conversation. It's basically the last conversation he'll ever have with anyone. And I don't know if there's much symbolism there as far as, because I tried to listen to what they were saying, and it just kind of seemed, I just took it at face value of like, this is him and his niece talking about their life. There wasn't a whole lot extra there other than it was a very beautiful, and I felt really like a real moment.
Yeah, it is. And I think this is, if you're following kind of the chronological order of like the idea of this movie, starting off, young, as we kind of get older and progress through life, we've now seen, different ways that death can come to us, and this is, maybe the third or fourth instance of death, and just, slowly dying in a bed. Like, that's that's a fact of life. And so yeah, and then it also brings I think it's the first time in the movie where we understand that other people have these, so-called appointments. They have this wonderful moment together. The woman is crying on his, lap, and it's a hilarious thing. He kind of pulls his head off. He's like, "Excuse me." Like, it's like, "I have another appointment." She's like, "Oh yeah, me too." And she's like, "Well, hopefully we get to do it again." It's like it's pretty great. Like these little weird comic relief type deals that are in here. But yeah, it's another really well acted scene, and it brings us to
the next limo ride, which so then this is the 7th limo ride. He's feeling kind of sick. And this is when we run into his old lady friend.
Kylie Minaj.
Old Miss Minaj. Menage a trois. If I could.
The lovely Kylie Minaj, if I may not add.
Yeah, she's okay, for sure. This is where we get, this is the one where I don't know what's real and fake. I don't know if I think it's really Mr. Oscar, but at the same time, I think they might both be putting on an appointment type thing. Like, it's tough because there's things that she says, like she's like, "Oh, this is my appointment for the night. I'm a stewardess with her last night to live. Like, I'm gonna kill myself," and she does just that at the end of it. And so I'm like, is this an appointment? Is it real? Because they said it's been like 20 years.
They have 20 minutes to catch up on 20 years.
Yeah, 20 minutes to catch up on 20 years. She's a beautiful woman. They're in this abandoned warehouse that's being remodeled into a hotel. The ground is covered with mannequins and cameras. That stood out to me, old cameras. I was like, so this must have been before they had limos. Was this like a similar thing where they had the actual cameras that they used and extras and for all their props, and they went to limos to be mobile, and it was just kind of it was a very and then she just starts singing. She says, "Don't talk," and just starts singing.
I mean, if you're gonna have Kylie Minaj, you're not gonna have her sing. She's got to sing a number.
And she sings, "Who were we, when we were who we were, who were we?"
Pretty great.
Pretty good impression, I might add. And then she's at one point she sings, "We once had a child who died or something." It was like, "We once had a child," and I was like, "Wait, is this real?" Yeah.
Yeah, again, so I feel like this is just kind of another instance of just the progression in life. And now at this point, we've seen Oscar die in several different ways. And as we all know in life, a part of growing old is seeing the people that we love die before us. And just another, basically, instance, another way to die is to take your own life, which we see her do, and this frightens Oscar. He sees it, he's scared, he runs back into the limo, and it's just it kind of adds to his exhaustion with the day, but also with the progression of life, and it comes back to that conversation of what keeps you going, the beauty of the act, and one person not being able to keep going, and yet we see Oscar continue on.
Yeah.
And he does continue on.
And another moment of strange comic relief, when she jumps off the roof and kills herself, she splats in front of him, and he goes, "Ah!" and just runs sprinting into the limo, dives head first. It's an odd thing. And then he has he tells Celine they have to laugh before midnight. He makes her laugh. It's a nice little moment they have. And then it's his final appointment. He opens up a thing. It says, "Your house, your wife, your daughters." And this one, I called Monkey Business. It's,
Please do explain.
okay, so basically, he gets out of the car. He gets the money for today. Celine gives him in the key. And Oscar kisses Celine. And he walks towards the house. And then this song plays. And I couldn't write fast enough when I realized what was going on. Because I feel like this song tells me what I think the movie is. And so I tried to write every word down of it as much as I could. But basically the song plays. And then he goes into the house. And he's like, oh, hey, sweetie. And it's a chimpanzee. And then let's go see the daughters. And they're both also chimps. And that screams to me evolution when I see that.
Right.
But it's odd. And he said to his niece when he was the old guy that there's no love in death. That's why life is so beautiful. And he just said there is no love in death was kind of something that jumped out to me. But basically what that song that plays goes is, because it's subtitled it was like in Italian or something, but it basically said, we would like to live again, but that means we'd like to relive the something, make the long journey once more, touch the point of no return, and feel so very far away from our childhood days. By heavens, something or other, we'd like to live again. That means we'd like to live the same thing afresh again. Our time has not yet come to rest. We have to do what we love again. And it kind of continues on like that. And so, I don't know if we want to... I'll just get into what I think what that told me, and it kind of coincides with what your theory is, sort of. I think that this is similar to reincarnation, and that he's a spirit of sorts, a soul that is passing through different lives and is reliving again. And it would explain the passes of different points in your life, and symbolically life and death as it is. And just, he says to Celine after what's-her-face kills herself, when he's drunk, he's like, that's what I am, or that's what we are, dead and drunk, is what he just plainly says. He's smoking in almost every scene, which isn't as common today. I know it's a foreign film, but I think if you're dead, why not smoke? So I think it could be something along the lines of it's something to do with reincarnation, and he's a soul that's kind of every day lives again through other lives in other points of their life. So that's kind of what I took from it, or at least I think that might be a central theme. Otherwise, then the ending scene is Celine goes to park the limo, right? And at the parking lot, the building is called Holy Motors. Celine lets her hair down. She puts on this creepy-ass mask, walks out. And then all the limos talk to each other. And then they say that men don't want visible machines. And they say they're going to be replaced. And at the end, they all say amen and go to sleep. So, I don't know. Did you have any thoughts about that last? I know I kind of did too there, but
no, that's good. I mean, it's what it is. Yeah, like I kind of got into it earlier, but kind of going his last appointment. He walks into the house. His family is several chimpanzees. So for a movie that's like really weird, this is kind of like the first like not really like earthly, thing to happen. Like, it's all, like, humans talking to other humans, sometimes being, like, deplorable and whatnot. But, so that kind of, takes you off balance there. That actually really scared me. That was right up there with, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, but yeah, I think the whole movie it's an analysis of Oscar's life on a micro level, and the ending with the ape is kind of like an analysis of man on a macro level, if you assume evolution. So ape and men coming together, evolving from one another. And then you have the limo Celine, who I would assume... So we talk about going back to Holy Motors, Celine does. Celine puts on the mask. Without Oscar, she has no face. She has no personality. She needs Oscar to be Celine, I feel like. And once Celine exits, you have the limos, who are, the Holy Motors, so we have the religious aspect. And for me, what I see all the different religions, talking to one another, and basically neither of them are in disagreement, but they're vessels for people to use for good or for bad, because obviously we've seen in this movie people do very good things, very bad things. We've seen that throughout history. People do good things, bad things in the name of religion, in the name of many other different religions. And so yeah, I think it brings you back to those three main characters. You have Oscar, the person, the vessel. You have the limo, which is, I think, morality or religion, and you have Celine, which is fate, who you can't control. Celine drives the car, and it's up to Oscar to use his morality to determine, his fate. So that's what I came from it, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Who do you think? Because Celine at the end there, right before after she puts on the mask, she calls somebody and says, I think it's a guy, and she says, "I'm coming home."
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Another question.
I mean, yeah, there's on a micro level, there's so much in this movie that you could ask questions about, but I'm pretty happy with where I stand with the movie now. I remember when I did write a big long review, I don't think I came to the conclusion of what exactly the limo or Celine were, but I feel good about it. So
yeah, I think you made some good points here, and yeah, like I said, just it was kind of a light bulb moment for me at the end when that song played, and they were just talking about all that, and then when other things he said about death, and I just kind of thought, yeah, maybe, I don't know, I just thought of like reincarnation or just going through past lives.
Yeah.
And then
it's all on the table
being
there,
involved. And yeah, when it's so visually, like you said, visual storytelling, when everything is symbolic, you could basically cut and paste your own theory almost into this whole thing. And there are going to be points that back you up, and there are going to be points that contradict you. The other thing a symbol that I thought that I was going to bring up earlier was his name is Mr. Oscar, right? The Oscar award is what actors strive for every year, and there were cameras, and he's an actor, so I thought, is it supposed to be like the Oscar is like each one of those things were nominees for Oscars, and
this dude deserves an Oscar for this.
He totally does.
He shows off some range.
Yeah, I mean, this guy puts on a clinic.
He's getting on the court and he's playing all the different positions. He's guarding 1 through 5.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I don't know what that was all supposed to mean. And then yeah, so this is definitely a film.
It's a film.
Like you said, it's a brainy one, and there is absolutely no definitive meaning to this. at all. But that's kind of the fun of it, is really diving in and seeing your own life reflected in it, you know?
Yeah. I agree.
So, final thoughts here.
Yeah, it's a fun film. You can take it at face value. You can dive in deeper. I didn't plan on going this far with it, but just talking to people, and it's just kind of the natural progression of it. So, yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy movie. It's definitely worth a watch. For anything, just the leprechaun scene, like we said. I would challenge you guys to watch it and see if you come up with anything. That's kind of the fun of it. And definitely watch the other two movies we talked about. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at LukeLarson89. You can find us also this podcast on Twitter at the L Squared Podcast, on Facebook at the L Squared Podcast. We're on SoundCloud. I'm working on getting us on iTunes. We're working on getting us a very special guest on here soon. Excited about that. But hey, if you have any questions, comments, please let us know. We're always open to that. And until next time, keep listening more.